for the murdered Nathan Dunlap. That's work that the governor should have done. And it's not, the fact of the matter is, if we all look inside, nobody would want to make that decision. Nobody. Who would want to make a decision like that? But when you run for governor, you stand up and you say, I will lead on the tough decisions and on the easy decisions, and you can't punt. Third, and the one that probably has the greatest long-term potential for our state, both in the short term and the long term, is I would begin to implement my blueprint for a leaner government. In short, it does two things. It drives down the cost of being a regulated business by 25%, and it drives down the cost, size, and complexity of state government so that people can be more free and they have more opportunities. The kids in our state and the grandkids in our state that need jobs, I'm sitting down, can get back to work and find opportunity.
So probably the first thing I would do, I'm going to stay seated if that's okay. The first thing I would do is remove the beer kegs from the governor's mansion. We're going to get rid of the beer in there. I agree with Mike. There's a couple straightforward things you can do pretty quickly with respect to the Nathan Dunlap execution order, and also with respect to the unionization, to stop the mandatory unionization, allowing unions into our government. There's just no place for that there. When you talk about priorities, though, there's a couple things we got to do. On the managerial front, we got to start paring back that bureaucracy, and that takes a while to turn the ship around, building that culture where people want to regulate less and not more. And you start that immediately by building the right executive management team, by putting in the right type of culture, by demanding certain benchmarks that people meet. The second priority, we got to get work on our state's education system. That's our long-term future, and that's a lot of a legislative push. The third thing we've got to do is work on cutting back taxes as well. I mean, some of our taxes are really bad. Business, personal property that whacks manufacturers right between the eyes. I see my time is up. The priorities are regulation, economy, education.
Nathan Dunlap will be executed. We'll repeal the gun laws that John Hickory signed. We'll repeal Common Core, get Colorado out of Common Core. We'll freeze all non-essential regulations. We'll go through every department and every regulation with one thought in mind. Is it pro-freedom or is it anti-freedom? Is it pro-jobs and opportunity or is it anti-jobs and opportunity? And once we do that, with an eye toward liberating Coloradoans, empowering individual Coloradans, we'll get this economy moving again, and we'll send a message that Colorado is once again open for business. And lastly, but equally importantly, I won't ignore the challenge of reforming PARA as this governor has done, pretend and wish it away. I'll roll up my sleeves and work with Walker Stapleton, your treasurer, to get this thing fixed so that future retirees will still have a program that is sustainable and on sound financial footing.
Before we move to the next question, I think I'm going to ask that we hold applause for each question just so we can get through more questions. And also, I think for the order, what we'll do is we went this way. We're going to continue to go this way, but the person, so if you started this round, then you'll start this round. And then the next question, you'll start this round. You'll have to keep track. But I'll be keeping track too, so I can tell. There's serious math involved there, but I think that I'll just go a little bit. That way everybody has a chance to answer first. And I will drink from my water bottle now, so you don't think I'm going to throw it at you. Go ahead while I vote. Good morning.
And thank you. Ooh, hey, there you go. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for letting me join you. I just want to thank all three of you for doing what you're doing to fight to take this state back, which will help us take this country back. I appreciate you all. You're all great patriots. So thanks for being here. The first question I'd like to ask is about minimum wage. President Obama wants to raise the minimum wage, and this could have really negative effects on businesses and people in Colorado. As the governor, what do you see as options for our state if he does pass some rule that we all need to get to a certain level of minimum wage?
So I fought Colorado has a minimum wage law in our Constitution, and I fought that pretty hard. I think it was back in 2008 or 2006 when that was passed. I don't think minimum wage is the right way to go. It basically removes employment from the lower end of the economic rungs. It makes it harder for people to get on that ladder to succeed. Now, if we have federal that gets in here and mandates it, we've got to follow the law. But the way you do it is you sidestep it. You build an economy where wages are high, and you build an economy where there's opportunity, and you build an economy where you're able to avoid or ignore some of the worst stuff that the federal government does. And then the other thing you do is you fight it. With a strong, bold voice, you say and you make the case as to why minimum wage hurts people, why minimum wage hurts people on the lower rungs of our economic ladder, why minimum wage cuts off opportunities. And we make that with a clear, bold voice, while we also build an economy so people can earn a good living.
See, we're feeling already. Where the heck in the Constitution does it say that the federal government's got the right to set the minimum wage for every single state? I think this is an example of where states ought to push back on the federal government and answer the question: is it within the federal government's authority or not? Maybe we take them to court. Maybe a bunch of us attorneys generals, our states through our attorneys general, challenge that presumption, that authority of the federal government, and take back our state sovereignty and our rights. The evidence on minimum wage is overwhelming. When you raise the minimum wage, you kill jobs. In the Senate debate the other day, it was pointed out that even the CBO says this minimum wage wage increase that the president's trying to push through would kill maybe 1 million more jobs, when his economy is still trying to get up off the mat. That's absolute insanity. It's wrong. You need leaders who are willing to say it's wrong. You think John Hickenlooper is going to challenge Barack Obama on that? No. It's another example of failed leadership, lost opportunity for Colorado. That's why I'm running for governor, and he ought to be replaced.
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Molly. When I started my campaign on October the 8th, it was actually October the 1st. October the 8th is when I began my tour. And I said I wanted to fight Washington and empower you. See, when I talk about freedom and opportunity in our country, what you're really talking about is a message of individual empowerment. And if you think about it, there's no force in our lives that is more disempowering than our own federal government. And so for that reason, I've spoken pretty openly about having a campaign platform of fighting Washington, build multi-state coalitions where we have a righteous cause against the federal government. And there are many. There are many righteous causes against the federal government. But the second thing is this. We need a governor who will go to the legislature on day one and will tell the legislature this: send me bills that make it more difficult for me to empower the voters in the state by giving them taxpayer refunds under Tabor. I'm going to veto that bill. This is going to be a state that is going to be pro-growth, pro-opportunity, low tax, and low spending. That's the direction the state's going to go. We're going to create opportunity and empowerment here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Kim Munson, and I also want to say thank you. We are lucky as citizens of Colorado to have such amazing individuals stepping forward to do this, so thank you so much. You'll know that this is a question from the audience because it says, I consider myself a millennial libertarian, Republican. Millennial part, as I was clarifying. My friends who are like me don't think that the Colorado GOP is very welcoming. How would you make a better home for us in the party?
Great question. Well, you can join my kids. I've got 4 children myself, and now 4 grandchildren, and I'm proud that all 4 of them are following in their mother and father's footsteps, and are the ones that are old enough are registered in the GOP, and happily so, I might add. They're not all millennials. They're just a whisker older, but one is still a millennial. Here's the way I see it, and it's an appropriate question, Kim. Millennials understandably have bought into the hope and change and the promises of the Democrat Party. But they've also opened the envelopes that said, you just lost your health care insurance, or your health care premium just went up. My daughter-in-law to-be gets to keep her plan. She's one of the lucky ones, but it's twice as expensive. I just read yesterday that millennials in Colorado, only Arizona in our region, is unemployment higher among that age group. age group. Only Arizona has worse unemployment among that age group than we do. As Don pointed out earlier in his comments, it's not 17% quite, Don, it's 48% of college graduates, according to McKinsey, that can't get a job in their chosen profession. They've been sold a bill of goods, Kim. We have a better plan. It's called liberating and freeing and empowering individuals to be as great as they can be. That's how we're going to reach them.
It's an exceptional question. Here's what I believe. I believe that it is one of the most basic human impulses to want to rise to your greatest potential. And for young people that look at our party and they see our party the way that it has been for so many years in their eyes as a bunch of scolds, we're going to have a very different manner of approaching them. And for me, that means we have to have a bigger narrative. Our narrative ought to be about all of the great opportunities that our state can create and provide if we will get our own government out of the way. I'll give you an example. I met with a young teacher. She's 25 years old. She's got brain cancer. Under her new policy, that is being dictated by this federal government, she has, for her life, 2 PET scans. That's what she gets. So her health care has been rationed. Do you think she understands the way that her own federal government is getting in the way of her opportunities in life? She understands it in a pretty powerful and profound way. The table has been set for us to cast an attractive vision. I'm up to the job. That's what I want to do.
Thank you. That is a great question. And I think it's a blend of policy and a blend of tone and tenor. So the policy, we need to be talking about things like, well, minimum wage is a good example. Saying, it hurts opportunities for people just getting their first job. And we explain the reason why it's tougher to get a first job is because minimum wage locks people out. And we need to talk about things like college tuition, where kids are graduating college with these massive debts, with not a lot of ways to pay them off, and they're never going to be discharged at all. It's going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. So we talk about these policies. But the other thing I think is tone and tenor. We got to, frankly, have a little bit more fun sometimes. And this is all serious stuff, of course. When I was called some nasty things like the honey badger of Colorado politics, I embraced it, because the honey badger is sort of a funny thing in some ways, but it also has a ring of truth about it. And so that's a way where you remove politics from just always serious policy discussions. You make the policy discussions relevant. But you do it with a smile on your face and with a tone and tenor, and you have some fun at this stuff, too.
Thank you.
I'm not used to being in the middle here. Okay? I'm exactly where I am on one side.
We must be flexible as governor. This is my own question. This is my own question, and each of us will have a question that we generated ourselves at request. We know the media will want to emphasize social issues during your campaign. Without giving us your personal views on the various social issues, what do you see as the proper role of the federal, state, and local governments with respect to abortion, same-sex marriage, death penalty, and so forth?
Well, that is a broad-ranging question. Okay, well, that's a great question, Jill. I'll tell you this. My observation has been, as I've traveled, well, in a period of 6 weeks, there's a young guy in here who can verify this. We did 11,000 miles, and I've spoken to thousands of people. I know my colleagues have done the same around the state of Colorado, and the questions that they're asking us are questions about, are you going to stick with us on fracking? Are you going to stick with us on creating more opportunity for my kids and grandkids? Are you going to repeal some of these bad regulations? Are you going to go after the bad gun legislation? As I said in my opening comments, I think the role of the government is pretty basic, and it has to do with defining and defending what your rights are. And outside of that, the government should not stray. And the fact is, the government has strayed pretty dramatically. I served in the legislature for 5 years, Jill. And I voted, am I out of time already? I voted, I'm sorry, I'll wrap it up here with this statement. I voted on a great number of bills, and you know who were supporting those bills? They were on the Democrats' agenda. They were on the Democrats' agenda, and that is the focal point for them. Our focal point is on issues of freedom. I'm happy to answer direct questions when asked, but the fact of the matter is our agenda is a freedom agenda and a freedom and opportunity agenda, and that's the direction I want to drive.
I'm going to go ahead and give the other two candidates a minute and a half to answer this question. It is a hard question. to wrap
You are
up.
losing complete control.
I know.
And whatever, the water thing's not working. So your question is about, the role of the federal, the state, and local governments on these social issues. To my mind, that's a pretty easy issue. It's a state issue. States, we should be in control of how we govern ourselves, of how we decide these issues. The federal government should not play a role in this. It should be a state issue, and we should be in control of our destinies here, period. With respect to, talking about the social issues, and I mean, we have to do it with a sense of respect towards other people. We have to do it, recognizing that there's other points of view, and that doesn't mean compromising, but that's why, when people ask me about pro-life issues and abortion, and my mom's in the audience, but I talk about how, her health, she almost died with my younger sister, and she was advised to have an abortion. The doctors told her she should do that to survive. And I'm thankful that my mom didn't, and my sister, well, generally I'm happy with my sister, but my sister's great. I love her. And she was born healthy and happy and all that. But, we also recognize the human drama and the difficulties of these decisions and approach it in a sensitive manner. Not compromising our values, but recognizing that there's ways to advance them with a very, in a respectful manner.
A very important question, Jill. But one, frankly, I don't think will be a big part of this campaign. The Democrats would like to make it part of this campaign because they don't want to talk about their failed leadership. They don't want to talk about an economy that hasn't recovered. They don't want to talk about how our millennials can't find the work in their chosen professions. They don't want to talk about their failure to lead. As for those laws that are all on the books, because so far as I remember, there are laws that guide all three of those big issues that you talked about. When I raise my hand and take the oath of office to enforce the laws of the state of Colorado, unlike our current governor, it will be all of them, those included. But I also recognize that there will be continuing dialogue on these very difficult issues among you. Not only politicians, but the real dialogue, the leadership needs to come from the people. And I'll be glad to lead some of those discussions with my principles and what I believe in. But I'll enforce the laws of the state of Colorado, be respectful of other people's beliefs on those very difficult issues, because great people within my own family have reached different conclusions than me. But also to know that the real conversation has to happen among the people, and that's where the change will come from.
Thank you.
I'll take that.
All right. So recently we've seen some new statistics coming out saying that unemployment has gone down. And if you believe that that is true because people are all working, then that's one thing. But if you believe that that is because people have stopped looking for work, that's another. Here in Colorado, I work with many business groups that are trying to figure out how to start creating more jobs and get the government's boot off their neck so that they can do what they do and get our economy running again here locally. And a member of our audience has asked, if we were going to reduce business personal property taxes, do you think that would help? Is it a possibility? And if so, what are we going to do to make up the money that normally goes to the schools, the fire districts, and the libraries, and so forth?
So, all right, I'm going to take a stab at this. So when it comes to the unemployment rate, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And that one falls in the statistics category. That's Mark Twain. I didn't make that one up. And it's because there's fewer people looking for work than ever before. And the way I look at the unemployment rate is it's a statistic that may or may not really comport with people's realities. And the reality is that there are fewer people working in Colorado as a percentage of our workforce, more people out who have either they're looking for work or they've given up than ever before. And people know that. And we talk to them and recognize that we have problems in Colorado. The business personal property tax, removing that, is a great way to help jumpstart the economy. You know, you look at all kinds of areas. Defense industry, for example, they're going to be consolidated. We want them to consolidate in Colorado. We want them manufacturing in Colorado. We don't want to be taxing their equipment and driving them out of the state or keeping them out. So we want them here. Two things real quick. May I go over this time?
Yeah, you may.
All right, thank you. Ask permission. Two things on that. If we cut business personal property taxes, it increases the growth of the economy. It's basic dynamic economic model. Supply side, Reagan economics. The economy will grow. You unleash people's creativity, you'll have more government revenue. And second, we're already seeing government revenue on the uptick. Instead of spending that money, let's not spend it, and let's cut the business personal property tax, and I think we'll be fine with that.
The simple answer is yes. Eliminating business personal property tax would help. The real unemployment in Colorado, again, to point to the Denver Post on calculations, about 10%. But tragically, among some groups that have been waiting a long time for help, low-income people or minorities, women, young people, they're the ones that are taking it on the chin the worst. And they're the ones who really need to get started in this economy to move up that ladder we've always called the American dream. So they're very much getting hurt. By my calculations, I referenced earlier, that our population has increased about 400,000 people since the recession started. I think we're short, based on historic participation in Colorado, people that want a job, have a job, we're short about 250,000 jobs. That's how you make change in Colorado. Put those 250,000 people to work by reducing regulation, get the boot of government off business and workers. It isn't just business. Ask a teacher if they think they're over-regulated. They're going to say absolutely. Ask a trucker, absolutely. So get the boot of government off, and then we can reduce not only the business personal property tax with robust revenue, we can reduce, I believe, our income tax rate, and everybody in Colorado then gets an incentive to grow this economy.
I gotta get tougher.
No, you're doing fine.
All right, give it to a minute, guys.
Yeah, you should really look at these two, that's for sure. Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is the business personal property tax is one of the poorest ways to raise revenue in our state. Think about what it does. Some of you aren't familiar with what it does, and here's what it does. If you're in a business and you own equipment, we're going to tax it every year, again and again and again. And as an employer, you have to go in and you have to calculate the value of that equipment, and then you get to do something similar to what you got to do with the IRS, which is always a wonderful experience for everybody. And you get to do that for your county assessor. You fill out your tax form and off it goes. The question was, what do you do if you repeal it? Well, I would repeal it. I would go after repeal immediately. I've already backed that. In the past, I voted that way, so it wouldn't be a big surprise that I would want to do that. There are a range of different plans that I've considered for doing this, but you start with this. You know, the big counties can do without it. It's the smaller counties, when you back that revenue out of some of these smaller counties, they're the ones that get hit. But we should not penalize the entire state and all the opportunity that could be created across the state for a bad policy that helps smaller counties. There's a way to back it out. I guess I'll use part of the time in another question to talk about it. But
Hey,
backing it out will help. Yeah. So that's another thing I'm going to do. Besides taking more time, I'm also going to... I'm just kidding. I'll stop.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Education is very important to the citizens of Colorado. We've received a number of education questions. First of all, what is the proper role of government in education, and how should the state government relate to the federal government and local government regarding educating our children?
Well, we should tell the federal government to stay back in Washington, D.C. And we really need to turn the model upside down in Colorado as well. We've been top down for way too long. And I think if there's consensus on anything in Colorado across party aisles, at least I'm hearing, is that people are absolutely fed up with being told what they have to do. And talk to teachers. I married one. That's what I wanted to be for first, and I've got a brother who was a teacher and principal his whole career too. But talk to a teacher today, and they'll tell you 1 in 6 days, 1 out of every 6 of those 180 days are mandatory testing of one kind or another. They're told what books they have to do, what other things they have to be a traffic monitor, a monitor in the lunchroom, a daycare in the morning and after school as well. They want to teach. We ought to pass a teacher's bill of rights to let teachers teach and let teachers control discipline in their classroom. And that is a bottom-up idea. Let local control flourish. Let parental choice flourish. For once and for all, it ought to be about the children. And we're failing too many children. Let's get it close to where the children live. Let teachers teach, parents choose, and we'll see performance increase dramatically.
Great question. I've got 4 kids that have gone through public school, all in Jefferson County. And most of them, in fact all of them, have wound up in choice schools. Choice works because it's close to the ground, it's close to the parents, it's close to the local leaders. You can keep your eye on what is happening in that school. It's not up to some far-flung bureaucracy somewhere to make the decisions for how you're teaching your kids in that school. The federal government manipulates states one at a time through money. It's through our own tax money. They tell the state, you can have this money, but you have to adopt this policy. This is incredible if you think about it. This is our tax money that goes to Washington. They take it, they do whatever they do with it there, and then they give us a little bit of it back, and they say, you can have it back, but now you have to adopt our policy. There's this little flap going on, you may have heard of it, it's called Common Core. And this represents all that is wrong with the elitist mentality of Washington. It should come down to parents and local control issues. And the state can be in the middle of that equation, ensuring that happens.
So I have 2 principles that guide my education approach. One is high standards, and one is school choice. And I think the state has a role in ensuring we've got high standards. But I agree with Mike in one sense that the federal government should stay out of this stuff. And what we see is the federal government, and this is in part why we have Common Core, we're stuck with it until we have a new government, is because the federal government says, well, here's a whole bunch of race to the top money. In exchange for taking that, you've got to adopt Common Core. And thankfully, Colorado hasn't completely bought into that mess, but we've bought into it a little bit, and that's the wrong way to go about things. I do think the state has an interest in making sure we've got high standards, and then you say, all right, schools, you go figure out how you want to do it, and we'll help you, but you figure out how to do that. But you got to meet certain standards. Here's the other thing. We got to be willing to step up and take the bull by the horns on these things, to use a metaphor. When we had this Douglas County School Board election, I actually took people off my campaign and I sent them down there because we were losing that based on the polling. And and it slowed my campaign down, and we knocked on 15,000 doors, mobilized volunteers. And the reason we did that is because we had to win that school choice fight in Douglas County. Because if we had lost in the richest, most conservative county in the state, if we had lost that school choice fight, school choice would have been dead in Colorado. So we've got to take action on this as well.
One of the thorniest problems facing this country and our communities is the ineffectiveness of immigration policy and enforcement. There are roughly 200,000 immigrants and counting residing illegally in Colorado who are in a legal limbo. A difficult dilemma is what to do about them and their U.S.-born children. What policies do you support to resolve this situation, and what steps will you take as governor to help bring these to reality?
Given the difficulty of this question, you give 2 minutes.
Okay. So I'm disappointed. I mean, here's the federal government determines citizenship, and they've just been an absolute, complete train wreck, as the federal government often is. And so states are left trying to pick up the pieces here and dealing with the fallout. I'm an enforcement-first guy. I think if we have laws on the books, and we do, and they're good laws, we need to enforce them. We need to respect the law. That is respect for the democratic process where the legislature makes the laws and the executive branch carries those out. And that's why, on Secretary of State's side, in order to be able to vote, someone has to be a U.S. citizen. And I was